Stress. 6 letters, less than a second to say, yet its effects can last an entire lifetime. You could be stressed about the big test next week, the one you didn't study enough for. You could be stressed about your social status, worrying whether or not your fellow friends find you cool or interesting. Or, in my case, many a days I feel stressed about the looming thought that what if every passing day and every fleeting moment we lose out on opportunities because we simply don't go out enough and meet enough people. And I know that I speak for a lot of introverted people on the last point that I'm certainly not alone. So what is stress really? Psychology states that stress is a state of mind attributed to harrowing or adverse situations. Science states that stress is caused by the release of chemicals in our brain, such as adrenaline and cortisol, in situations we may perceive as dangerous in order to initiate a fight or flight response. I believe that stress is an amalgamation of both definitions. What I came here to do today was to address this deep-rooted culture of stress that we as a society, that we as a species have built around us, and just how much of an amazing motivator it can be to those who know how to control it, and just how cruel it can be to those who don't. Stress is like a burning flame. When controlled, it is the guiding light that helps you see clearly in the dark. But set your sights off it, be it for a second, and soon you find yourself engulfed in ash and surrounded by fire. That is what stress truly is. Back in primary 6 to be exact, just as I was about to sit for my PSLE, which was Singapore's UPSR equivalent, I had scored extremely low for my mathematics trial, and this was really unnerving due to the fact that my PSLE was just a month away. And for the first time in my life, I truly let stress dictate my actions. Instead of being that nagging backseat driver at the back of my head, stress took center stage and controlled and hijacked my mind, causing me to sleep less, eat less, and reside in my room day in, day out. The day the results came, I was filled with stress once again, albeit a lesser form. And when I looked down at that coveted results slip and I saw that I had gotten an A, I was overjoyed. In this case, stress motivated me, more so threatened me into doing well. You could say that stress enabled me to fight. Although it may seem as if I look on at stress with rose-tinted glasses, that could not be further from the truth. That over-encompassing feeling that you're gasping for air where there is none, with dread filling your hearts and thoughts of anxiety filling your head, nearly inhibited as opposed to enabled me from giving my presentation today. It's very ironic, isn't it, to get stressed over talk about stress, but that's what happened. And just as I was about to throw in the towel and give up, I asked myself, and a few others, if I didn't give this talk, who would? Challenging the idea that stress is something to be accepted, to be able to progress yourself, to progress your character. That you cannot run away from it and that it is part and parcel of your daily life. I was even more motivated to give this talk after finding out on the 10th of October, on World Mental Health Day, that a staggering 1 in 5 teens experience depression, while 1 in 10 experience anxiety. Now, take a moment and pause just to realize how many people that actually is. How many people in this room right now are suffering in silence? For the later parts of my secondary school life, this dark driver would take my mind on an endless joyride. And fast forward about a year and a half later, I once again find myself struggling, like a shark with no fins, completely dead in the water. This dark driver began revving up the engines once more, but what made it different this time around? He had only one destination in mind, to crash and to burn. The self-inflicted pressure to stay on top, as well as the growing difficulty of the subject matter, only seek to aggravate this crazed driver. And my friends in Singapore, they were of no help. They were unempathetic, uncaring, because they had their own problems to deal with. Not wanting to trouble an adult, no less my parents of all people, I bottled up my emotions, which I can tell you was definitely not a good idea. Every day saw this volcano of emotions build up more and more pressure, so close to reaching its critical mass like a dying star just about to collapse in on itself. And then after 8 years of living in the only home I knew, we moved. It wasn't an easy process, moving back, losing all my friends who I had naively believed I would be with for the rest of my life, moving back to a country I had only called home for about 4 years before moving away. And for 2.5 months, I found myself lazing around idly with this dark driver taking a break, parking itself on the side of my head. I wasn't exactly stress-free, although I did feel a lot better. And then the day came, the pivotal day in your secondary school life, or in my case, my second secondary school life. The first day of school, and feelings of stress went into overdrive. And it certainly did not help that I, a young adolescent male who is socially inept and incapable of carrying out basic speech, who spent most of his life in a boys' school, was finally going to a co-ed school. You could say the first few days were quite rough. And then the days passed, followed by weeks and a month or two, and I found myself with a new set of friends and with a new startling realization that everyone, and I mean everyone around me, was just as stressed, if not even more so. Although their ways of coping with it to me seemed extremely unorthodox. Some found their solutions at the heart of social gatherings, numbing their minds so this dark driver could not take over them once again. And then there were those who found solace in overworking themselves, thinking the less time they had to be free, the less time this dark driver had to take over them. And then there were some who would idly waste their time on social media just so that this dark driver would feel too tired to take over them. Now, all these ways of coping with stress have something similar with one another, aside from its adverse effects to the mind and the body. They're all temporary. They only seek to avoid the problem, not face it. Yet, so many of us, adults included, much rather bottle up our emotions and ignore that stress that is clawing at us to be heard, that is clawing at us to be acknowledged, that is clawing at us to be addressed. I feel that there's a stigma in many secondary schools about confiding in other people about your problems. And it's sad to see some student counselors rarely seeing work because the people in secondary schools are too afraid to go there voluntarily. Why are they afraid, you might ask? Well, the answer is simple. They fear judgment, like any one of us would. They fear as if they go there, people, their friends, will look at them differently. They feel as if the only people who go there willingly are those who are mentally unsound. And it's such a crushing thing to see, to know that everyone around you is drowning in their own seas of self-doubt, yet they are so adamant in rejecting the life raft thrown to them that they rather just drown. I too am afraid of talking to an adult about my problems. I have the responsibility of keeping my parents happy, like many of us do. But that's where the similarities between me and the rest end. The people who I confide in the most, aside from my parents, are my friends, as cliche as it may sound. Let me tell you a story that led to one night where I dropped all my walls and all of my pent-up emotions and feelings of stress flew out of my mouth effusively, one after the other. I'm a creature of habit, as most of us are. I don't favor change all that much. And one of the things that I will do habitually upon returning from school is to Skype my friends, as if I couldn't get enough of them at school already. But before I got much closer to a group of friends here in Malaysia, there was one friend that I would call from Singapore. Now this was a very, very mutual friendship at best. Sometimes he played games with me, and sometimes I played games with him. But his, so to speak, purpose, to put it very bluntly, was just to be there. Now, despite having the constant affection and care from my family in my household, because I'm a day boarder, I don't like the feeling of loneliness I get when I'm studying or doing work. It leads me become anxious, giddy, and overall just lose focus. I always just need someone there to talk to. Now, this friend from Singapore, like many others from Singapore, couldn't care less about my problems. So I had gotten used to the I don't cares and the it's your problem. But it didn't stop it from hurting any less than it did. And for the most part of our toxic, symbiotic relationship, it was working. And then, inevitably, me being me, I did something that messed that up. I said some things to him that I really shouldn't have, and it caused a great rift between us. Not that we were any close to begin with. And for 3 days, I spent frivolously apologizing to him, but it was to no avail as he had blocked me on every form of social media. And once again, I was surrounded with this dark driver, revving up the engines even faster than before. And then, I had an idea. Why not call my friends from Malaysia? And it was one of the best decisions I had ever made, aside from willingly coming back to this beautiful country. There were 2 guys from my friend group that I regularly called on a daily basis, almost religiously in fact. And as the days went on, our closeness did grow, so much so that all my secrets lay on a knife's edge, balancing on a sharp precipice just about to tumble out. And the day did come. It came when we had invited another to the call, a girl this time. And I found my mouth moving on its own. All my problems and pent-up emotions and feelings of stress just disappeared like that. And after that experience, I found myself with tears in my eyes, just as much as they did, because I was sharing just as much as they were. And after that talk that we had, that dark driver that was plaguing my mind for the longest time was no longer there, because I had told people who cared about me, who cared enough about me, and cared enough about my problems, that they listened and they gave advice. But listening in its own right was already a pleasant change. Where this dark driver drove my mind around, driving it to anxiety, these friends acted as a speed bump, allowing me to regain control of something that I had lost. It doesn't take much to change someone's dim outlook on life due to this dark, maleficent driver. All it takes is the God-given ability to listen, just as so many of you are doing right now. And that's how I feel someone should cope with stress and the burdens of our society today. If you're not comfortable talking to an adult, or your parents for that matter, talk to your friends. After all, why are they there? And if your friend, be it co-worker, be it classmate, or be it someone you just met, trusts you enough to tell their innermost insecurities and problems that they have, don't dismiss them. Listen. Because I can tell you, personally, by being met with the same 3-worded answer in Singapore, it did not do good for my character. It did not do good for my identity. In a world where getting A stars has become the norm, and where having several special talents of your own, as well as the initiative to take charge to lead in situations, have become expected, where job markets are becoming oversaturated and this world itself is slowly dying, it is sad to see that teens in this world on fire can be so vocal about their opinions and ideas to revolutionize and change this world. Yet you ask them, you beg for them, you plead for them to talk to each other about their problems, and they freeze like a deer in headlights. And we really need to make a conscious effort to change, because it's sad to see that in a world that's so interconnected with the creation of the internet, that we can still be so disconnected from each other's character. And like I said before, we need to make a conscious effort to change, to better ourselves for society, to better ourselves as a species, regardless of race, regardless of age, regardless of religion. Sometimes, the greatest action a friend can do for you, a true friend can do for you, is to do nothing at all but listen. Because after all, God gave us 2 ears for a reason. Thank you.